obviously the Mad Hatter Show podcast. And I got this wonderful gentleman by the name of Mr. Conerly that was kind enough to speak to me. Really, me and his son been chopping it up in the gym, and I found out that he was related to royalty. And I was a little upset because I'm like, man, nobody in Houston, Texas, all the stories that you will always hear when it surrounds the music industry, you know, you'll hear Rap a Lot, you'll hear Jay, you'll hear Screw, you most certainly will hear Beyonce, even UGK and Bun B and Pimp C, even though, you know, they buy products of, you know, Port Arthur, but you'll hear these names and a lot of others obviously associated to the music scene. But a lot of people will leave out some of the greats that started record companies and labels and artists that were from the city of Houston, and it just gets left out of history altogether. So when I was talking to Mr. MC about his pops, and he told me that he was on Peacock Records, my ears just popped up, because a lot of people don't realize Peacock was one of the premier black-owned record companies in the country. Not only from Texas, not only from Houston, Texas, not only from Fifth Ward, but in the country with huge artists.
In the world.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people forget that part of the history of this city. The city has such a rich history. And like I said before, I was just excited when he told me who his daddy was. I'm like, hold on, man. Your daddy was da-da-da-da-da. So I'm showing him like he don't know who his daddy is, right? So I was just excited, and I'm like, hey, man, got to do something to get some of this history out there and put out there. Shout out to my brother Donnie Houston. He does a great job of capsulizing all this. But knowing MC person, I'm like, this is something I just have to get this young man on video to tell me some of these incredible stories that we've heard about Peacock Record and the owner of Peacock Records. But you were actually there, you saw it, incredible artist yourself. You've written many blues and R&B records and worked with a lot of the greats. And still putting out music to this day right here. I want to say that how many years young, but I'm gonna say it's 80 years young and still releasing music, which is incredible. You That's now right. How long has your music career been?
63 years to this date.
Wow. So let's go back. So I want to find out who you are first, and then we can get into some of these incredible.
Sure.
Where did the music side of you come from? Are you originally from Fifth Ward? I know, and we most certainly should start with, Daddy was a preacher and go from there.
And Daddy was a preacher, so naturally I grew up in the church.
Yes, sir.
Singing in the choir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And at the age of 18, my mother passed away. And when she passed away, things kind of fell apart, the family fell apart, and I was left to kind of fend for myself. And the only thing I knew to do was sing.
Yeah.
So I started going to the little dives in the community, singing for a meal. And from there, I started my own band after a couple of years. And after that, I continued to just grow into music and got exposure. And I met Don Roby through another musician by the name of Piano Slim. Piano Slim had his own band, and Piano Slim was also a staff writer for Duke Peacock Records. And one day they needed someone to sing a demo song. And I looked out my door, and there they were pulling up in my driveway. Piano Slim and another writer by the name of Alton Balier. And Alton had written a song that everybody's probably very well aware of now. It's called There Ain't Nothing You Can Do. And he had just written that song, and they wanted me to come to Duke and sing the demo for Bobby Bland.
Wow.
And it started off that way, and I ended up getting signed with Duke because of that meeting with Slim and Alton Balier.
Let me ask you this. So was the community aware of what Don Roby was doing with Peacock and Duke Records at the time? Like, was it a big deal for this community?
Oh, he was very, very influential businessman. He not only had the record company, but he had a very established club called the Palladium, where all the big artists came, and when they entertained in Houston, they always came through Mr. Roby.
Wow.
At the Palladium. And he had other businesses. And So it was not just the music, but he was a very influential businessman. He was a golfer. He played
Really?
golf.
Okay.
You know, when not many of us
Played
played
golf.
golf
Yeah.
back in those days.
Yeah, yeah.
And he did golf, and he was just a businessman, very, very sharp, shrewd man. I always look at him and say, man, if you'd have just been a little bit more legitimate. but that's another story.
Yeah, yes, sir. Now, how did he transition? Because obviously he didn't always have the record label. You said it all started really from his clubs, and then it turned into, you know, what would become Peacock Records and Duke Records.
As a matter of fact, you know, speakeasies, as they call them, were very popular back in those times when there was a prohibition against liquor. The speakeasies was where people went to have them a drink and got bootleg whiskey and what have you. Well, that was Mr. Roby's business at first.
Okay, gotcha.
And once he the speakeasies went under when they legalized liquor, then he switched the speakeasy to some of the people that were coming in to his speakeasy to play and entertain people as they drink their bootleg whiskey. And he decided, you know, I think I'll take people like Gatemouth Brown and Willie Mae Thornton. He brought them in. They were already playing at his speakeasy. Now he says, I'm going to have a record company, and Willie Mae, I'd like for you to be on the label.
That was just that simple.
Gatemouth, I'd like for you to be on the label.
Wow.
And it went from there, and he was a very, like I said, very shrewd businessman, and he knew publishing like the back of his hand. You know.
So he might have not wrote a song, but maybe received some publishing.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, some of the songs yours truly wrote, his name on them, because he always kept a wad of cash in his pocket like that. And you know, I'm a young musician trying to make it, and didn't have any money. So I'd walk in his office and go, well, I really like this song.
There you go.
And he'd count me out some bills, and now it was his song. And so he did quite a few artists like that. We had at Duke, we had a day on Tuesdays was called Songwriters Day. And on Songwriters Day, all the songwriters would come out to the studio, and all of them would have written their songs that they were going to present to him that day. And he didn't spend time doing anything else but evaluating the songs that the writers came to present. I was brought in there to sing. Once they presented the song and he liked the words, he'd give me the paper and say, hey, make this into a song, sing this. And that was my position, was to sing those songs. And so it was a fantastic time, and even though there are some things that people say in the industry that they didn't like the way Mr. Roby conducted things, I can say this: he gave the music industry, the artists, the struggling artists, the writers, an opportunity to present their craft.
Absolutely. Some of the artists that were signed to that label, correct me if I'm wrong, was Mighty Clouds of Joy?
Mighty Clouds of Joy.
They were signed to, so it wasn't like he just did gospel or just did blues or just did R&B. He did all of it.
Across the board. He did it all. Mighty Clouds.
Because I didn't know that. Read somewhere.
Pilgrim Jubilees, whom I later wrote a hit song for. When I left Peacock, I went to Malaco, and one of the things I might mention, that Malaco Records and Duke Peacock Records were on the same level as far as the record business. And they were in competition with each other because they did the same genres. And it turned out that everybody, that when Mr. Roby sold out to ABC Dunhill, not long after that he died. I say the that the record company kept him alive. But when he sold that record company, looked like he didn't last too much longer.
I got you.
And the Malaco ended up with almost everybody that was on that label at Duke. They, including yours truly, they signed to Malaco.
I didn't realize that Malaco was around that long. I thought it was something that came around in the 80s.
Malaco was around about as long as Duke was.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that. I did not know that. I did not know
Like
that.
I'd estimate they started around in the late 50s,
Really?
mid
Okay.
50s.
Was it black owned? I don't know this story. That's why. Or was it
No,
white?
the Malaco is owned by the Couch family.
Okay.
Thomas Couch and Tommy, now the president of the company is Tommy Couch Jr. And he was
They are not of color.
at Malaco.
Oh, they are of color. They are black.
No, they're not black.
They're not. Okay.
They are a white, what would you say, the Caucasian race.
Okay. Okay.
But the staffing is mostly black.
And all the music that they released, did they release only blues and R&B music, or did they do maybe country and branch?
If they did anything else, I'm not familiar with.
Okay, gotcha.
All I know, A&R was black. The artists were black. The staff, the clericals, everybody was black.
Okay, let's go back to Peacock and Duke. A lot of people do not realize that the song "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog." No, I won't sing too much because I don't want nobody to flag me. But supposedly, obviously, Elvis Presley. I don't know if he stole the song, was borrowing it, whatever you want to call it. But it originally was an artist on Peacock Records. Is that correct?
As a matter of fact, it was originally the song by Big Willie Mae Thornton.
Okay.
She made a mega hit out of it.
Yes.
And I guess Presley heard it on radio and go, I like that. And so he recorded it, and it happened that in the clerical part of Duke Peacock, in the office, where they had like 4 or 5 secretaries, they all had radios on their desk. And one day, one of the secretaries heard Elvis Presley singing Hound Dog.
Okay.
And she called Mr. Roby from his office, and she said, Mr. Roby, isn't this your song? And he said, what? You know, he got all excited, called his lawyer. They filed a lawsuit against Presley's company. Jets, I read it in Jet, and I was sitting at home at Jet reading a Jet, and I saw that.
Jet magazine, for those that don't know.
Jet
Incredible
magazine
from back in the day.
Johnson Publishing
Yes,
Company.
sir.
And they own Ebony and Jet. And I was reading the Jet, and the first thing I opened is I see Mr. Roby's picture. I'm going, hey, this is where I work at, you know, and I'm getting new information now. And so they said that he had settled for $250,000, and the president paid him $250,000. And also, he promised Mr. Roby he would do several more of his songs.
Wow.
And so that put a buck of money in Mr. Roby's pocket.
I'm sure it did.
With Presley being as popular as he was.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do is I jump in my car and drive over to T. Rascals and Liberty Road. And I go right into I was one of the few artists, a few writers that could just walk in and just say, I want to see him, and could see him. Most of the writers, they could only see him on Tuesdays.
Okay.
But because he knew me from a kid, we were kind of close.
Okay.
We drank coffee together every morning. And I went out, I said, I want to see Mr. Roby. And he said, tell him I'll be there in a minute. And finally he tell me, come on in the office. And I threw the Jet on his desk and said, man, look, you know, why don't we remodel the studio? Why don't we do it? He said, man, you must be crazy. He said, if I decorate this studio and do all the stuff you're saying, don't you know the mafia will come down here and take my record company?
Wow.
He says, I'm not down here and I'm not up here. He says, I stay right here in the middle. I sell $5 million worth of music in Germany each year. He said, nobody bothers me. He said, but if I get too big, they'll come for me. And so it was a lot of interesting things that I learned from him, being in the industry and being around him. Some things that I would take with me, and some of them I would leave on the table.
Okay, got that. Now you also said, and I didn't know this, so this is, we were talking before we started filming, that Little Richard was also on Peacock Records, or at least had one song on it or something like that. Tell me that story too, because
when I came,
the Tutti Frutti, I don't think he made that one because there was a little problem.
But the story is, when I came to the label, Richard was already there, and I think probably was already gone, maybe just a few months before I came to the label. And the story was around among the writers and in the A&R department, when we be back there discussing events and what have you, and things that happen at the record company, is that Mr. Roby was on his way fishing, and that he told Richard, when he saw him on the street, hey, you need to get to writing and get a song written so that we can get something out on you. And he went on fishing. Well, when he came back to fish and he was cleaning the fish, story goes that he told Richard, let me hear you what you got. Richard let him hear it. And it was Tutti Frutti, Old Rudy, Bop Bop Baloo Bound. Roby thought Richard was making fun of him. He didn't realize this was a real popular song. So he grabs the fish and slapped Richard with the fish. After that, from what I hear, Richard left and never returned. He left the record company. But there's a lot of wild stories. Some of them are humorous and funny, and some of them were not that funny.
Yeah, I understand.
I won't touch on those.
Yeah, I understand. What's probably, while you were there, what's one of your best memories of being on Peacock and writing for these guys and doing demos for them?
The songs that I wrote I Won't Let That Chump Break Your Heart by Carl Carlton. And it goes, la 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 la, I won't let that chump break your heart. And I wrote that song, and it hit Billboard at number 69 with a bullet. And later in the year, it was time to record Carl Carlton again. And Mr. Roby called me in his office and said, hey, we need to write some songs for Carl Carlton. And I said, okay. And he said, and remember, you got to put that la, la, la. I said, I'm the first one that wrote la, la for him. So you don't have to tell me.
What to put in there. You know how to do it.
Oh, yeah. And he told me one time that, he said, man, you need to learn how to maybe not talk so smart to people. He say, when you struggling trying to make it, don't talk too smart to them. Wait until you get where you're going, and then talk smart.
That's right.
He said, you'll sure know how to do that.
Yeah. And by the way, when you say Carl Carlton, I got to make sure that people understand you're talking about the Carl Carlton that had the song years later,
Jamma.
Bad Mama Jamma. So I just want, now he did have other hits, but a lot of times people don't remember other songs from Carl Carlton because Bad Mama Jamma it sticks in our community. I know it sticks in our head that's the go-to Carl Carlton record. He was such a great singer, had so many great records.
Leon Haywood, another good friend of mine, whom he signed Carl. He also signed me later in life, and he also signed Buddy Ace.
Now go back, because I'm glad you mentioned Leon Haywood. I almost forgot about that, because Leon Haywood, you said, had the record label called
Eve Jim.
I used to always see these records when I was in college radio, when I was a young fella, and I used to always see those records and never realized that this is Leon Haywood.
Yeah.
Leon Haywood he would be famous for what records?
He was
that
his
people would
first.
know?
Leon's first big hit was wow! It was a fantastic song.
Now, did he also do "Don't Push It, Don't Force It, Let It Happen Naturally"?
He did that.
Okay.
But there was his first. Leon started off as an artist, and Leon was right out of Sunnyside here.
Wait a minute. Hold up, man. Hold up. Leon Haywood is from Texas?
Yeah, from Sunnyside, Texas.
I never heard that. You just hit me with another one. Leon Haywood is from Sunnyside. See, this is what I mean,
Yes.
man. A lot of these stories, people don't know how deep the music lineage of this city is. I never knew that.
Oh, it was very,
Wow.
very deep. And Leon moved to California. He was an organ player.
I thought he was from California. Wow. Did not. From Sunnyside. Wow.
And he moved out there, and I wish I could think of the title of the song, because at that time that this song came out, I was working with the Entertainers Band.
Okay, now that's the group that you got with, and you released the song with them. Now, was it just one song you released with the Entertainers?
The song called Why. There was a song called Why and another song called Poor Boy. And these songs I did with the Entertainers Band. The Entertainers Band was a bunch of college students who were all music majors, and they formed the band, and they heard me sing, and they recruited me to be part of the group.
Wow. What school did they go to? Did they go like to TSU?
Texas Southern.
Really? Wow.
They had Tommy Burton, who's a local musician. Tommy, I think, is still playing locally here now.
Wow.
He's a horn player.
Okay.
They had Lester Grant, who's deceased. They had Johnny Brown. I'm sure you're familiar with guitar player, blues boy, Johnny Brown. Very great musician, great guitarist, and a great artist, and a great gentleman.
So why didn't this group stay together?
Well,
You sang one little hit for them and say, all right, guys, I'm out of here?
We went, no, what happened is we went with Skipper Lee,
Wow.
and
Skipper Lee.
as a group, he signed us as a group and put out that song Why and Po' Boy on us. And during the time, there was a lot of the Vietnam War was going on.
Okay.
A lot of things were happening in the world, and a lot of people were switching groups and trying to go to that next level. Archie Bell and the Drills was on that label.
That's Tighten Up.
Tighten Up.
Now, was that Mr. Skipper Lee's?
That was Skipper Lee's.
Was that on his record label? Now, I know eventually it ended up on Atlantic Records.
You're right, but he started
deal.
with Skipper.
Wow.
Skipper made the difference on that song. He played it. Skipper was on KCOH.
Right.
Radio
Big time
station.
DJ.
And another great gentleman, Skipper Lee.
Wow.
And Skipper made that song and broke that record. Then he went to Atlantic with it. And it was just a lot of things happening where the entertainers, some of the group was drafted in the military
Gotcha.
during the Vietnam War and different things, and kind of split the group up. The way we ended up recording Poor Boy and Why is we were playing, and I told the group that I was going to leave and go to California and pursue my career in recording industry.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want me to leave because we were working 6 nights a week at the most popular clubs here in Houston.
Okay.
And we were very busy and pretty prosperous little band. So they didn't want me to leave. So they said, I tell you what, if you don't go, we'll record you right here. So they recorded me and took it to Skipper.
Oh, so that record came out with Skipper. That didn't come out on Duke.
No, that came out with Skipper Lee.
Oh,
Before I signed with Duke, I was with Ovive, Skipper Lee.
Oh, so you started with Skipper.
So started off with Skipper.
So okay. Now let me start over from that point then. So how'd you get signed with Skipper, and then how did you get on to Duke Records? And
Okay,
Don
now
Roby?
I already knew Mr. Roby
Okay.
because, like I said, when I was 17, Piano Slim and
That's right. And
Alta
them came over
Belier
to
had
get you
picked
to
me
sing.
up
Yeah.
and took me over
Right.
to the studio.
Right.
So we were already familiar, and Mr. Roby had started recording me to be a child star, like Michael Jackson. All the labels had child stars.
Okay.
So he had chose me to be his child star, but my dad and him didn't agree on contract issues, and ended up not signing the contract, and I was too young to sign the contract.
Okay.
So I went and just played in bands, and I would work out at the studio without a contract, doing demos for Mr. Roby.
Gotcha.
And we stayed very close,
Okay.
even in that tenure. But I was still not quite, you would say, settled on what direction I was going to be going in. And I was with the Entertainers Band, and they suggested that we go to Skipper. So I went with Skipper.
Gotcha. Okay. So were you ever directly signed as a artist to Duke Peacock?
I was an artist and a staff writer. And it all come about one day. Mr. Roby said, "Tell Conde come up in the office, I want to talk to him." And he got that water money out again. And he counted
Gotta
out,
have that water. Gotta have that water cash.
and he counted out 5 $100 bills.
Okay.
And laid it on his desk, and he said, "Now," and he pushed the contract over in front of me. He says, "I want you to sign as a staff writer,
Okay.
and if you sign as a staff writer, I will sign you as an artist as well and put a record out on you."
Okay.
And he kept his word.
Okay.
And that same song got a mention in Billboard, and I walked by his office one day going into the clerical department, and he said, "Hey man, come in, let me show you something." He said, "Look, your record is here." He said, "And I ain't paid them a dime. They just chose your record." And so
He's talking about payola, y'all. We won't get into that on this episode. That's another episode.
but he said, "Here you are in
Long
Billboard."
standing in this industry, though. Another episode.
He said,
what was the name of this single now?
"Little Girls Go Home."
Okay.
And A Whole Lot of Soul Is Gone. And if you go on YouTube, you can still hear them.
Yeah, it's still there. So what was the bigger record? The one that you put out with Roby or the one that you put out with Skipper Lee?
The one I put out with Roby, because when I put that record out with Roby, he was world renowned.
Gotcha.
And I didn't have to guess whether or not it was being heard. I would have guys that were in the military that would come from Vietnam and say, "Man, all we hear in the Nam is you."
Wow.
And so we knew this was a popular record, quite popular, so popular that Mr. Roby was afraid that I would leave and go on the road and realize how much a clout I had as an artist, and he'd lose a demo singer. So he wanted to keep me there, and now in retrospect, I understand he wanted to keep me there because I was an important link, not only as an artist and a writer, but as doing all of the songs for all the other writers.
Right.
And so he kept me there, and I told him that I was going to go on tour behind my record, and he said, "Well, wait, and give it a little time, and I'll promote a tour on you, and I'll send you out there." So I waited. He never produced the tour, and I went in. I said, "Man, you told me you were gonna." "Well, no, but I'm not gonna be able to do that." And I knew that it was all, he never intended to do it in the first place.
Wow.
Wow. And so there was some times when we our relationship wasn't quite so charming.
I got you. I got you. Now, when do you make this shift to Malaco's? So,
Now,
because it seems like this is about 70-ish in that area.
Many years later.
Okay.
Because all of the people that I knew from Duke were already at Malaco. Johnny Taylor was at Malaco. Buddy Ace was at Malaco. All of these different guys that was at Duke, they were now at Malaco. And it all happened, a lot of things in my career happened coincidentally. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, a man came to my house, he heard that I was a writer, and he had a young artist who he wanted to get with Malaco. So he came to me and he said, would you write this young artist some songs? And we want to buy the songs for you. And they offered me quite a handsome little taste of money.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I went to write the song, but I knew what Malaco liked. So I catered every song to that I knew Malaco would just love. Mm-hmm. He played them for Malaco and they said, please come. But what they didn't realize that I was going to Malaco with them. So they bought the songs off of me, but no sooner than they called me and told me, hey, they just signed us. I called them Malaco and said, hey, but I wrote those songs. I sold them to them. They said, oh, well, we want you.
Wow.
And
now, can you say who this artist is that you was writing those songs for?
Mm-hmm. Who's Pat Green.
Wow. Okay.
Patrick Green.
Okay.
The PG man.
Yeah. And
Pat and I are good friends, and at that time, Pat was very close to Mel Waiters, and he introduced me to Mel.
Wow.
And Mel heard some of the songs I was writing, and now he wanted me to just not go with Malaco, just stay with him. But I'm going like, man, you with Malaco, but you telling me not to go? Well, no, that won't work.
Yes, sir.
And plus, Malaco gave me a pretty decent salary.
So you were a staff writer for Malaco?
Staff writer. Uh-huh.
So they didn't sign you as an artist at Malaco?
No, but they were getting ready to.
Okay.
But few things happened. You know, things happen in the industry. Nothing that wouldn't have stopped them from eventually doing it. But what they did, when things got kind of slow in the music business, the industry took a hit, and they wanted to cut my advancement. They paid me an advancement for 6 years.
Wow.
Never missed a month. And they wanted to cut it in half. And my contract ended at 4 years now, but I've been down there 6 years, mm-hmm. and they still paying me. And I told them, you know, hey, it's time for a new contract. We're gonna get it, but they never did. And then finally they said to me, well, we just thought you would stay down here and work without a contract. And but you know, and maybe I should have, because after all, they were paying me.
Yes, sir, I understand.
And they never missed a payday.
Yeah.
But it turned out that we disagreed over the contract thing, and I ended up leaving there like 2009, some time ago.
So was Haywood? So Haywood was before the Eve Jam, correct? Eve Jam was before Malaco.
Haywood was between Duke, Duke
and Malaco. And you released the single with.
Yeah, and it was a hot singer. It was one was a cover song, "Slip Away" by Clarence Carter.
Right.
That was one of the songs that I did, and another song was my old friend Piano Slim that took me to Duke, had written a song called "I Won't Let." It won't not title. Getting the titles confused here. It was "You're So Special to Me."
Okay.
You can still find it online, and they put it out.
But this is under your name. These are all under just
this
your
under
name.
Bobby Conerly.
Okay.
The Bobby Conerly. That's when I was the Bobby Conerly artist. I was Bobby Conerly for about 30 years.
Okay.
And after, so many years in the industry, I graduated to Pops.
I got you, sir. So you stayed. So how many songs did you do for the Eve Jam, Haywood's label?
I only did a single
Okay.
for
So you did a
for Eve
single.
Jam,
So you did a single.
and we were working toward an album, but a few things in the industry happened, and it was kind of taking a little time to get the album done, and so Leon, unfortunately, he took ill, and we never got the album finished.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
But I was out there when we were recording at the same time. You may have heard Buddy Ace's album, Root Doctor. It was a terrible, terrible, terrible album, man. I mean, it was off the chain.
Really?
And I was out there when they were recording it because Buddy and I recorded on the same at EGM on that weekend.
Wow.
But it was a very successful song, but things kind of fell through the change because sometimes distributors don't give you a right count. Things like that were mentioned for the record not establishing what it should have.
Got you. Do you know if his family still has control over the Eve Jam, or if the label still exists?
His daughter is basically the one that is still in control.
Because he has such a huge, he has such a huge. I mean, even him as an artist. I mean, I didn't even.
Oh yeah. Oh man, if I could, we could probably go online and find the song that made him. He signed a deal with 20th Century Fox.
That's where I know he had the big "Don't push it, don't force it."
Right.
But I'm thinking that he also did "I Want to Do Something Freaky to You." I want to say he did.
I believe he did.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe he did. But the first one was.
It was before that. And I don't.
The first one was.
I'm usually good
at
this kind of stuff, sir. But I do
was
not.
the one
remember.
that got him signed.
But he had a lot. Haywood had a lot of hits.
Oh yeah.
I'm just excited that you said that he was a Houston guy. So.
Yeah, and he was he had a gold record on his wall for Bad Mama Jamma.
Haywood? Oh, because it was on it. Wait a minute. How would he have? Because I thought Haywood, because that went to Mercury Records, didn't it? Bad Mama Jamma?
But it started off with Haywood. Haywood was the one that cut it.
I did not know that.
Haywood cut it.
So it was an independent song at first. Wow.
Bad Mama Jamma.
You just hit me with something.
We were all kind of homeboys. Leon, Carl. Now Carl wasn't a homeboy, but he came to Duke, so everybody got familiar with Carl.
So he lived in Houston for a little while too. Carl Carlton would have.
Carl Carlton signed with EGM.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was quite a few of Buddy Ace. We were all with Duke, and now we were all with EGM.
And everybody that was signed to Duke back then, I know I'm just jumping back and forth because I'm just trying to imagine all these people living in Houston, Texas.
Yeah, it was quite a man. Houston was off the chain. Was the city like the way we are about these days? If you mention DJ Screw or you say something about Beyonce or some of our other rap icons, Zero, or was it the same way with those artists at that time in this city? Like if I would have said, absolutely, maybe even more permanent,
really? Because
then you had a little club on every corner, and the bands were always playing at those clubs.
Gotcha.
And the Palladium that Mr. Roby owned, he brought in all of the top artists. If you had a hit record, you were gonna play the Palladium.
Wow.
And so it was like, music was totally different from what it is now. It was very, very lucrative.
Yeah.
Very, very. We had more radio stations that were established, local radio stations.
Yeah, I get it.
That were established that played the local music.
Gotcha.
As well as world music, they played the local music records as well.
See, it's nice to hear that because a lot of people just, again, they miss this part of the history and they just truly don't know. Now, I'm gonna jump around a little bit again, and I'm gonna get past the Don Roby because I know we could stay on that forever. But I want to talk about your career. When did you make this transition fully, because I know you've released a couple of albums where you finally, and I'm not sure if you released your albums on Malaco. I know you wrote, because you wrote for Denise. I don't know. And what was that? Even before you talk about that, talk about the experience for writing for a Mel Waiters or Marvin Cease or Denise LaSalle. What was that like? Like, did they come to you and say, "Hey, Bobby, I want this kind of record"?
It was an exciting time.
Yeah.
It was an exciting time for me in the industry. I remember Malaco called me up and said to me, "Look, we are going to send you a contract in the mail." He said, "If you sign this contract," he says, "then we're going to send you a check. And we want you to head to San Antonio to Mel Waiters' home."
Wow.
And that's how it all came about. And
so obviously you signed and you ended up.
I signed the contract. They sent the check.
And you was in San Antonio.
Mel had a lovely home over in where some of the San Antonio Spurs live. Mm-hmm. And Mel was a great guy. Sometimes, you know, a little off because he dealt with some situations that he was not happy about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, him and I, we became pretty close, and I ended up writing Friday Night Fish Fry for him.
Wow.
I wrote several songs for Mel, and the list goes on, at least 10, 12 songs I wrote for Mel.
What'd you write for Marvin Cease?
I wrote for Marvin Cease, Sit Down on It. Okay. You know,
where do these ideas in your head come from when you writing these songs?
Well,
is this personal experience, some of these songs, or?
Basically, we look at the artist and we see, especially if it's an artist that has been successful in a certain genre, mm-hmm. I try to keep them in that genre. When you know, biggest hit that Marvin had was Candy Liquor.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, there's a sexual concentration there, and so I'm gonna keep him sexual. So sit down on it. And there was
not a lot of math need to go with it.
No,
sir. Yeah.
They were to figure that one out. So that was his next biggest hit.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah. I'm not gonna ask too many questions about that song. If you want to know about it, go online and listen to it on your free time. We ain't gonna get into why, how, nothing on here. We just giving you the history. If you want the history of that song, you do that interview. We ain't doing that one right there. How fun is it when you write these songs though? And are you tickling yourself when you write a certain song? Like you making yourself like, I can't even believe I'm writing this.
You know, I always look back at where I started. Mm-hmm. And the first song I ever wrote was a song called A Month of Sundays. And I remember being a teenage boy in Fifth Ward walking through the park, and I wrote the song. I just started singing the song, "A month of Sundays gone by, I sit alone and I cry." And I just started singing it, and I go, you know, I can write a song. Mm-hmm. And so when I met Piano Slim, I told him I could write songs and I can sing. And he took me for it, my word for it, and he came and got me, took me to the studio. And basically, to answer your question, what goes through my head is the journey. All of the times in the past that I worked to get to where I was an established writer, where people knew that I could write songs and that I could sing fairly decent, and I could have been a little bit more sharper in the business end of it, mm-hmm. because when I started in music, I was a high school dropout. I have an associate degree now, but back when I started off in music, I was uneducated, but and so there was a drawback right there. That was a stumbling block for me in certain areas.
How was your father? I want to go back to that real quick. How was he with the music you were singing? Because you said that he was a preacher. So
Yeah,
oftentimes when you start singing secular music and
I
somebody,
I might also mention that I'm an ordained preacher.
oh, now,
30 for
yes,
since
sir, congratulations.
yes, and I'm doing gospel music now because, we usually return to our roots.
Yeah,
And so, after I've tried everything in life, I found that my faith walk was more important to me than anything, and I returned to the church.
absolutely, absolutely. When you were doing all the music, what was your father like
You
during that
know,
time?
he was probably a little thrown off. He had lost his wife, uh, and then he married, and he lost another wife, and he was moving around in the country, in Colorado, in St. Louis, different places, preaching and evangelizing. But he and it was very touching for me. I had not talked to him or heard from him in a couple of years, and I was at a club that Skipper Lee owned called the El Casino. And I was there one Wednesday or Thursday night. We played that club with the entertainers. And to my surprise, my dad came to the club to see me.
Wow.
And that was very touching for me.
What did he say?
He just said, Bob, I'm going back to Colorado, but I wanted to see you before I left. And so he had my sister and all of them to bring him to the club. He waited outside, and I went out after I got through singing and greeted him.
Was he into your career?
Yeah, oh yeah, he just told me don't wear red suits.
What was it about red
Yeah,
suits?
yeah, he said men don't wear red.
Okay.
Not real men.
Okay. I don't want no gang members to take this the wrong way.
Now I know a bunch of us that would choose to agree to it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but in the old school,
It was a little
the
different then.
church in the church they had certain criteria. The do's and you don'ts.
That's right. That's right.
You didn't smoke. You didn't drink. Not in his church organization.
I got you. I got you. So you started, now we're going to get back to you. You started doing your own records.
Uh-huh.
When did that start happening? Because I don't remember the transition from you starting to release albums. I don't remember if it was a Malaco or Eve, Jim.
It happened at Malaco.
Okay, so you
and
did
it happened
finally-
at Malaco because what happened is all of the songs, I have a 200 song catalog at Malaco.
Wow.
And it all happened because when Malaco set me up under contract with them, I had to build a home studio. And I built a home studio, and all of the songs that I sent to Malaco were in the form of a demo. It were already created songs, the melodies, the beats, everything established, and I would send it to them as an MP3 or if for like a digital
CDs,
music
yeah.
format. And so I decided, I knew eventually Tommy Jr., who is president of Malaco, I knew eventually he was going to hear something on me he liked, and then he was going to put it out. I knew that was about to happen.
Okay.
And he had already called me in and said, now, he brought me down with Mel to work on Mel's album, and he said, I want you to ride with Mel when you come down. And he said, not that we don't want to buy you an airplane ticket. That's not a big deal. I knew they had bought me airplane tickets before, so I knew it wasn't a big deal. He said, but we just want you and Mel to get closer and as y'all come down and work on his album. And when I got there, the first thing he told me, he said, the way Mel got established here, he said, he did everything we asked him to do. Would you be willing to follow in Mel's path? And so I knew they were getting ready to sign me as an artist. They had already signed me as a staff writer and they loved what I was doing as a staff writer. So it was just a matter of time, but they were a little slow in bringing in the process. And at that time, I decided I decided that I was going back to gospel, and I recorded a gospel album. And when I recorded the gospel album, I sent it to them, and the Pilgrim Jubilees came into the studio, and they heard one of the songs. And they heard that song, and they wanted to record the song. So they recorded it, and I had a DJ call me up from KYOK and tell me, say, man, do you know what your hit is? And gave me the title of the song and say, this is just not happening here in Houston, it's happening all over the country. Mm. And did not realize that I had a gospel hit and called Work On Me. And after that, we worked with Mel, and I was so involved in doing gospel, doing R&B, doing blues, until I ended up doing another blues album.
Wow.
and it just went on from there. But it all began while I was at Malaco.
Okay. How many albums did you end up putting out?
At
this time, you would have how many albums?
I'd say about this time, about 6.
Okay.
I went to a small record company that distributed it called CBS Records. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
Did you say CBS?
CBS.
CV or CV?
CVS.
CVS. Okay. Where they out of?
They were in California. Okay. Now they're in Ohio.
Okay. How'd you like that experience?
They were okay, but they didn't have the power of the record companies that I was accustomed to being in.
I got you. And now I'm going to speed up a little bit, because I know now you still, like I said before, release music up to this date. You still put out music. Why is it that you still continue to release music? Because at this point, a lot of people are like, oh, you should be retiring, relaxing a little bit, taking in some sun, but the music is still in you and you keep putting it out.
I guess it's in the genes, because it's the hardest thing for me to sit around. Like I told you, Mr. Roby, I think he would have lived another 8-10 years if he had stayed in the record business.
Okay, then.
Because he got up every morning, he came to that record company, and it gave him something to look forward to drive it. And but no sooner than I talked to him right after he sold. And the strangest thing, even though we had our disagreements sometimes, we were very close. And I remember him telling me, he says, I know you're not happy with some of the things that happen with me and you in the music business. He said, but when they get ready for some real good music, they're gonna come looking for you. Mm. And sure enough, Malaco came, and EGM came, and so those are things that he told me that encouraged me. Now, as far as me, I just couldn't. There's nothing else for me to do. I love music. I grew up as a kid knowing that I was going to be in music. Even as I guess 8 years old, I knew I was going to be in music.
Yeah.
Because what happened is, my dad was a preacher, and he was a Kojic preacher. Kojic is Church of God in Christ. And he was a Church of God in Christ minister. And I saw the struggles that he had. I was very close to my dad. And when he'd go to fix the step on the church, do carpentry on the church, he would take me with him. And so I saw the struggles he had. And then I saw a Jet magazine with the Platters on it. And they had this fancy Rolls Royce, nice suits, diamonds on their hands. I decided I'm going with these guys.
I got you.
And that's basically how. And so I knew even back then that I was going to be
Going in that direction. Yes.
an artist, and I was going to be in music. And I started going to jukebox. They had jukeboxes then where you put a quarter in and you play your music. And I would sit there and put my ear to right up against the jukebox and learn the tones that they were singing. And it went on from there. But it's just been an exciting time for me now that I'm still in music and I've given my life to Christ. I still include the music. I sing gospel songs now, but I'm still doing the music.
Yeah, I got you. What to you, outside of family, because I know if I ask you this question, you're going to say my biggest achievement is my kids. I love them so much, and grandkids. I know you're going to say that. But outside of family, what would you say has been the highlight for your career? Like when you think about that time, you're like, ooh, that was
wow.
I felt like I was at the top of the mountain right there.
Well, I guess to sit and put your mind to something and accomplish it. Like when, for instance, when Pat Green, manager, came to me and asked me to write songs because he wanted to go to Malaco, and I wrote the songs that I knew Malaco was gonna love. Mm-hmm. To be able to sit and think that and then see it materialize. You plan something and then you see it come to life.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know how I was gonna get to Duke, but I knew I was gonna get in music. Mm. And so that's the highlight, is just knowing that if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, eventually it'll happen.
What would be the Bobby Conerly legacy that he would want somebody to remember about what he did from a musical perspective?
You know, from a music perspective, is that I always tried to write positive messages to demonstrate that I cared about people, and to just be able to, the thrill of it is that somebody heard it and they agreed with me. Hey, this ain't bad. Mm. So basically, that is one of the high marks of my career, is just being accepted in the industry, to have others recognize, oh, you got something there, we can use that. And to pay me for it?
That ain't bad. And what about and your family? How would you the legacy you leave with them? What's that like, in your opinion? What's that like for you?
My son, whom he told you about me, he has been one of my biggest supporters.
Yeah.
MC has always encouraged me in my career, and he's even helped me in certain areas in my career. And so I appreciate the fact that he's done that, and that we are family, and that's what really matters. Yeah. When it all comes down to the bottom line, it's about family and the strength of families. And I would tell any young person, whatever you do, stay with your family.
Yes, sir. Mr. Conerly, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the wisdom.
Thank you.
I appreciate you and your legacy and telling your story, because I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of this story gets missed, particularly as it relates to this city. That's why this is important to me, and I appreciate Brother MC allowing me to even talk to you, so it can be documented, so it's always somewhere where somebody can get the history when they start to fall off and think that there's no, the history of this city stops right here. And you go, no. You have to dig deeper.
There you go.
You got to dig deeper. It's much deeper than just, we got to the 90s. There's some 50s and 60s that you got to learn about too. You dropping on me that Haywood is from the city. Did not know that. You just told me something I totally didn't know. I'm totally excited to know that now, because somewhere in the conversation, I'm going to throw that out as a side piece that's not going to matter to anybody but me. But I'm going to be happy to say it. But I appreciate the time. And these kind of stories need to be told, because people have a tendency to love to forget or to highlight a particular part. And that becomes what the city is. And the city's musical legacy is so much deeper than what they know or what they research or what they've been told.
And it's been a pleasure being with the man.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. I hope y'all enjoyed it, man. This is now, once we get done here, now what I need you to do is scour the internet and find everything with Bobby Conerly name on it and check it out for yourself. The blues, the soul, where he started off, the whole thing. Find out about Peacock Records right there in Fifth Ward. They got a mural over there with Mr. Don Roby on it and the whole nine. Know your history.
May I add?
Yes, sir.
Also, the writer's name is Robert E. Conerly. The artist's name is Bobby Conerly.
Okay.
And don't forget, we graduated to Pops Conerly now.
Don't you forget that part right there. I appreciate y'all. Pops, I appreciate you.
Thank you
so
man.
much.
Thank you.